Dr. Bill Crawford here, psychologist, speaker, author of 8 books, host of 2 PBS specials, here again to bring you another tip on how to help you create the life you want. Specifically, how to use my life from the top of the mind system to bring more clarity, confidence, creativity into everything you do. Today, I want to talk about difficult conversations. You know, as a speaker, a trainer, I give them, my seminars have 3 parts to them. It's based on the life from the top of the mind system. Part 1 is, okay, what bugs us, what triggers us, what annoys us? How does that have to do with the neuroscience? How do we get trapped in the lower brain? How do we shift from this reactive brain to the more purposeful, clear, confident, creative brain so we access the best of who we are? Part 1. Part 2 is, all right, now that we know how to get to what I call the top of the mind, how do we rewire the brain so we don't get triggered as much by difficult people, difficult situations in the future? Part 3 is, okay, how do we get other people to shift from their resistant brain to their receptive brain so they truly hear and understand what we're wanting them to know? Most of the people in my seminars are very eager to hear part 3. And so we go through part 1, we go through part 2, everybody kind of knows that. And then we get into part 3, and I give them a 6-step model for actually engaging people in a way where it has every potential for them shifting from what I call the resistant brain to the receptive brain. The first step in the 6-step process is going into the conversation, taking 100% accountability for the qualities and characteristics we're bringing to the conversation. One of the things I talk about when people are talking about accountability, you want to hold people accountable. I said, if you notice that doesn't work, and that's because a lot of people see accountability as who's to blame if something goes wrong. So I talk about accountability being the ability to be counted upon. Accountability is the ability to be counted upon. And in order for us to be influential with others, we have to go into the conversation taking 100% accountability for the qualities and characteristics we're bringing to the conversation. The quote I'm sending out to those 6,000 people on my quote list. By the way, if you'd like to be on my quote list, so each week you receive one of my favorite quotes as well as a link to this week's video, all you got to do is go to my website, billcrawfordphd.com, hit the subscribe button, put your name and email address, and each week I will send you one of my favorite quotes, along with 2 or 3 paragraphs about how to apply the quote to life. This week's quote is one of mine. It says, you can't create a solution-focused conversation from a problem-focused mindset. You can't create a solution-focused conversation from a problem-focused mindset. And it comes from my experience of talking to people when I talk to them about, getting into the conversation, being clear about what we want to bring. Then I ask them, okay, give me a situation where you want to apply this. And they tell me a situation where they go into the conversation very worried or concerned, or maybe even upset. They're either trying to convince someone to stop or change some behavior, or they're worried that what they're going to say is going to upset someone, or if it's a review, feedback session, they're afraid they're not going to hear it as valuable. And they go in trying to convince the other person of the value and the righteousness of what they're trying to say. Unfortunately, most people don't like to be convinced. There's a concept that I call the lesson of the fist. When the more we try to force someone to change, the more they resist us. That fist tightens down. They become more resistant, more resentful of what we're saying. So what happens is if we go into the conversation worried about something or concerned about them or some problem, or is this going to be heard in the right way, we're going in actually in this lower brain. And that means we do not have access to the knowledge and skills, the clarity, confidence, and creativity that we need to be successful in engaging people. So what I encourage people to do is go in with what I call a solution-focused mindset, but first focus on the solution that you can control, or that we can control, which is who we are, the qualities we're bringing to the conversation. How about empathetic and confident and caring? Or if you're talking with a family member, loving, influential, and kind. Can be almost anything, but you want to have one kind of powerful one, confident, influential, and at least one more graceful one, empathetic, loving, kind, curious. Because when we go in just powerful, then people can be intimidated by that power, or they put up their own power blocks as well. If we go in just nice and always just, trying to say the right thing, and then we come across as wishy-washy and people don't hear us. So I encourage people to go in with them in mind. What are the qualities I want to bring? What's the statement I want to make about who I am in this conversation? And am I willing to take 100% accountability for that? No matter what happens, that I try to stay in this upper 80% of the brain. The next part of my 6-step model is something people very rarely have heard before. It's reaching for the best in the other person. See, again, we have a tendency to go in focusing on their worst. Part of that has to do with how the brain works. The middle brain, which is called the limbic system, I just call it the middle brain, lower brain, middle brain, top of the mind, has a negative bias, and it pays more attention to the negative than the positive because it's kept us alive as a species on the planet by keeping us worried about bad things happening. But when we're going into a conversation focused on what this person is doing wrong or what they've got to change, because if they don't, bad things will happen, that comes across as if we have no confidence in them. We're questioning their judgment. We're questioning their character. We're questioning their ability to make good decisions. And they get, understandably, triggered by that. So rather than hearing what we have to say as valuable, they hear it as a lack of confidence or a lack of caring. So what you want to do is go into the conversation. Yeah, maybe there's some things you want to address. But the first thing you want to know is, who is this person at their best? Because that's who they are in the top of the mind. That's who they are in the part of the brain that you really want to partner with a little bit later in the model. So you go in asking yourself, okay, what does this person do really well? What do they love to do? If they're part of your organization, what did they do well? If they're part of your family, what do they get excited about? You go in holding an image of them at their best. So the first 2 steps in a difficult conversation has to do with what we want to bring to the conversation and what do we want to bring out in them. Then, of course, everybody knows listening and empathizing is a good idea, but here's why. When we listen, we're listening for what's important to them, not just whether we agree with what they're saying, but what's important to them. Because our goal eventually is to kind of build or blend what's important to them with what's important to us. But we've got to know what's important to them. So we go in with curiosity. Hey, help me understand what's important to you here. What am I missing? Help me understand what you want me to know about this. Once they tell us, rather than trying to let them know whether we agree with that or not, what we need to do is to make sure they no longer need to defend their right to think and feel what they think and feel. So that's where empathy comes in. But it's not about agreeing with them. It's not about kind of tolerating bad behavior. It's saying something like, I can see how you'd see it that way. I can see how that would be important to you. And then you use a magic word. And the magic word is always and, never but. You never want to say, well, yeah, I see what you're saying, but man, we got a job to do. We can only, or how many times have we talked about this? So we can't do that anymore or whatever. But will negate anything that comes before. So you want to use and will tie where the conversation is to where you want the conversation to go, as long as where you want the conversation to go is about what's important to you as well as what's important to them. Then the key is to ask a question. Questions are actually the search engine for the brain. Rather than trying to convince someone of something or tell them something, ask them a question like, would it be fair to say, given that this is important to you, that in the future, if we could do this, or you could do this, or I could do this, would that be more helpful? Would that be something that would fit into what's important to you? See where they go with that. All of this is about having a solution-focused conversation, but not dragging them kicking and screaming to the solution, because they will just resist. It's going in with a solution-focused mindset. In other words, you're focused on the qualities you want to bring. You're focused on who they are at their best. You're listening and learning what's important to them. You're letting them know you get it, so they no longer need to defend it, and then are asking a solution-focused question. Now, all of this is easier said than done, and very few of us grew up with this model. So it's one that I teach. It's one that I kind of demonstrate in my book, Life from the Top of the Mind. It's what part 3 is all about. I've got another book called What to Say, where I talk about how to use this particular model in different situations. So if this is something you would like to get good at, or like your leadership team to get good at, or the people in your organization to get good at, and you would like me to come and do something for you, happy to do that. It's what I love to do. Just go to my website, billcrawfordphd.com, hit the contact button, let me know what you're interested in, and I'd be happy to go and do this for you and teach everybody you know how to kind of have these solution-focused conversations. In the meantime, I hope you're enjoying the videos. If you do, please hit the like button. You know how everybody loves it when you like it. Share it with your friends if you think this would be valuable. So, in the meantime, here's to you, bringing more clarity, confidence, creativity into everything you do, and more solution-focused conversations to those that you're having conversations with. And I look forward to seeing you in the future.